Most people know who I am. I am the nurse midwife that started Midwifery Business Consultation and runs Empowering Midwifery Education. We started doing these webinars probably about 3-4 months ago because sometimes just discovery calls, people don't ask what they don't know, or they want a group setting. They want to bounce off each other's ideas and networking. I mean, sometimes it's kind of cool what happens after these. So Sandra joined our consulting team about 4 months ago. I mean, time flies when you're having fun. Sandra's in Canada, near Ontario or Ottawa. I'm trying to remember.
I am, yes, Ottawa, Ontario. It's part of the
so I got them both. Wonderful.
Yes.
So Sandra is absolutely amazing. When I was starting this past spring to look at expanding our leadership team for the consulting services, I was just getting too busy on my own. I had this intention. Deidre had been with me for 1.5 years and is really good at home birth practices. And I'm like, let's look for 2-3 amazing ladies. And then I found 6 that I was like, I can't, we got to make it work. We got to figure it out. So Sandra has an extensive background. It's pretty impressive. If you go to the website, she can give you the elevator speech after I'm done talking, but she's in Canada. She's from Argentina. She is a wealth of knowledge, and I'm just here to more facilitate and help. If there's any tech stuff is my role. So I'll put myself on mute and take it away, Sandra.
Yes, so I was born in Argentina, and I got my degree in midwifery in there. And I worked there as a midwife for many years. And, you know, as working in South America also opened opportunities to be involved in some global health projects, you know, in South America related to training indigenous midwives or like midwives in certain areas of the continent. And so I was involved through this project, through the World Health Organization, the ICM, and then I immigrated to Canada. And here I also work as a midwife. I went through because here midwifery is regulated. So I needed to go through a process to get my license with the College of Midwives. I was able to do that, and I work in Ottawa from 2004 to 2018. Yes, and so I had 28 years of experience as a midwife, basically. As a clinician, I had leadership positions. I was the chief of midwifery here at the Ottawa Hospital, and I created my own practice. So, and right now I am finishing my PhD in organizational leadership. I am very, very close to do that. Yeah. So this is a little bit about me.
I joke all the time, Sandra. I said, if I get to 10% of what you've accomplished so far, I'm doing great. She's just an amazing lady. And so we've brainstormed expanding the business consulting services to Canada and replicating more of international consulting services and translations and different local needs. So her and I've got some wonderful big projects for the future. But yeah, if any of the ladies that are on right now have specific questions, you're more than welcome to just voice up, put in the chat box. But if no one has anything specific, I know that Sandra and I can pivot just to kind of talk about common international questions we both get.
And I also completed an MBA. So I also bring that business experience, and which is really helpful for the profession right now.
Leslie, are you going to, I think I have video now, right?
Yeah, I can see you perfectly. Thanks for joining us, Atusa.
Hi, my name's Atusa, and I'm a licensed midwife working here in Los Angeles. And I work in the out-of-hospital setting, birth centers, and home births, and I do a lot of educating. I'm also a doula trainer, and doing a lot of trainings these days. So I've always been interested in international work, and I was just wondering if you all are going to cover organizations that are currently accepting international midwives to come over and help, because I know during COVID it all got closed down. So what's opened up again that's not going to take a 9-month or 2-year commitment like Doctors Without Borders or something like that?
So right Sandra, now, do you know much that direction?
I think that right now Australia and New Zealand, they are looking for international. They are looking for midwives, and so there are could be more opportunities for to work. The thing is that in Canada also too. Here there are also opportunities. The College of Midwife right now is created like a bridging program, but unfortunately in all these countries where the profession is highly regulated, you might need to go through an assessment process related with your visa, your also your credentials. To the College of Midwife here in Ontario and in Canada has an exam that you will need to write, and I believe that New Zealand and Australia has the same regulations too.
I know there's and sometimes it's simpler if you want like more flexibility. There's quite a few midwives doing mission work and actually international programs that some of the students will join and some of the experienced midwives will join. So I know there's one midwife in particular in Haiti that has a long-term nonprofit. I know you're going to ask who it is. It's on the tip of my tongue. I'm going to have to dig and look through my conversations and emails, but sometimes even putting on the midwife Facebook groups, like, hey, are you doing any international projects? Are you starting a birth center in Africa and you need some help? Like some of these places, there's a lot of states with no regulations. When I did Midwifing the Midwife and we made the international regulations, I was shocked. Out of the 119 countries, 3/4 of them, there were no regulations for midwifery. So it's more of like what Sandra was talking about, the visas, the citizenship, how long you're staying, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. There's different criteria each country. But honestly, if you reach out to these midwives already starting the programs, already doing things, you're going to springboard off of them and just join the project. Because sometimes these big things with Doctors Without Borders, they just make long-term commitments because it's a lot for them to get you on board and trained. So sometimes finding a fellow sister midwife that has your same calling that's already a little bit ahead of you is way easier.
And also I know that there is, for example, in some Scandinavian countries have some non-profit organizations that also they are looking for professionals, and they can link you with some probably placement in as Leslie mentioned, in Africa or even Latin America.
Mm-hmm. What was the name of that, Netta? Sorry, Sandra?
There are some, for example, there is the Maternal Foundation. I think this
Maternal Foundation. Okay.
Yes, and I think that is it's a Danish organization, and they might have programs there. You can go through their website and see, because they do lots of humanitarian work related to women's health, and it might be also opportunities there.
Got it.
That they can link you with places maybe in Africa. I don't know which kind of work do you want to do.
Yeah, there's a lot of different types of international midwifery. Yeah. I know Augustine Colebrook and a few other ladies connected me with, there's some Facebook groups that are more for the angle of these high-end rich European ladies that are looking for a midwife that they'll house, and you have a vacation and you come out the last month and do some virtual prenatal visits. But most people, when they're talking international midwifery, they want the mission work, they want to serve an underserved community, they want the culture experience. But international midwifery means you're just traveling internationally. Yeah. So there are different angles of all these ladies need to be served, but it's just, you go out and you're boutiquing for one lady, really premium price to get to travel somewhere gorgeous. There are actual Facebook groups, and these pregnant ladies are paying buku bucks to bring in a midwife because maybe they were in a country that had midwives and now they've moved and they just can't get what they're looking for. So there's different types of midwifery. I think most of the international midwifery we're used to is the Doctors Without Borders or just mission work and going there for a short stretch. But the definition is literally you just leave your country and you serve as a midwife somewhere else, and there's a lot of ways to do that. So.
Yes, it's very important to define what would you like to do and achieve. In my case, I wanted to probably contribute with my clinical knowledge and to train midwives. I was not doing, I was not delivering babies, basically. What I was doing, it was training.
Education,
Yes, using my knowledge in the neonatal resuscitation, in emergency skills, in helping underserved populations.
Yeah.
Because also we have to be mindful is that sometimes we bring our Western mentality or Western culture when we are emerging in some of those places. So it's really being very mindful about what would be your mission going internationally.
And I wish we had more midwife focused programs and smaller scale operations, because the level of quality of care and cultural diversity and humbling. I mean, sometimes we just live in our little bubble of the US and like, oh my gosh, like this is a no-brainer, when we're grateful and kissing the ground because someone had soap or a towel. And like some of these stories ladies tell me, it really gets you a different perspective of just appreciating things and thinking outside the box, but also being like, okay, my biases are coming out when you're the outlier versus you don't realize it. So it does, I think, better midwifery students and midwives as a whole, if you do it long-term or short-term. There's so much possibilities of benefits. So is there any questions anyone wants to talk about or specific pivoting points? I appreciate you, Tusa, bringing that question up. I think everybody's just more curious. So, Sandra, I would be curious because, I mean, cultural immersion, do you recommend people go there ahead of time, test it a little bit, or is it more of just like, hey, they've had other colleagues, there's a strong reputation of international midwifery in the area? What are tips if someone's looking at different opportunities they have? How can they determine what's best for them?
So you have to obviously go a little bit before and do what is called cultural immersion. And if you can start reading and doing some, you have to educate yourself because it might be quite shocking, right? For example, I went there and if I needed to teach suturing, some people don't have those instruments. So I needed to figure out how I can teach suturing instead with a curved needle to use a needle that is not curved, that is straight. How am I going to teach that? And so these are some things that yes, definitely requires cultural sensitivity. The ethics part is very, very important too, because one thing is to do we need to get away from what is tourism, medical tourism, which is not what it is, because that has a very bad reputation. To do medical service while you are traveling and indulging, this is not what I feel is ethical, right? There is an ethical boundaries. So that's why it's very important to immerse yourself in the culture. Try to understand, because as I mentioned, we come with a Western mentality. We have gone, in my case, I went to school, I went to university, but to study midwifery. So I was bringing that aspect, which I needed to probably lower it down. You know, I was really young when I did that, and I needed to learn about because people can take it offensive too.
Yeah. There's a balance of educating versus you feel your arrogance and all and I know nothing perception of and even stuff locally. I feel that way with the Amish around me because it's a very isolated conservative community, and they have their local granny midwife the way it really used to be, the old lady in the community that's been around a lot of births, and you get called for home visits and I'm like, these are my neighbors, but there's such a disconnect of the cultures, but you also like want to be civil. So it's always a challenge. It doesn't matter if you travel around the world or right across the street, you get these extreme cultural differences and barriers and access. Like it's another world inside a world when they keep isolated. But
so when I was in Bolivia, what I did is that I went to an area and I stayed with a local midwife there, and I stayed with her to learn about what she was doing. So I followed her. I was basically her apprentice during that probably 2 or 3 weeks, and then I was living with her. and understanding what she was doing and what was the expectation of the people that they serve from me if I was going to be doing some training, right, to other midwives. Yes, so this is something that also is important to find those community leaders that can help with the immersion.
Yeah, clear expectations, communication breakdown can happen in anything. If you think I'm going there and doing this, this, and this, and then it's not that. Yeah, you want to have clear expectations of what you were supposed to bring, what you're supposed to do, how long it's supposed to be, things we take for granted that we think are basic living standards may be a luxury in other places. So we can't make any assumptions when you're considering a place. And I think, like you said, Sandra, the best thing is just going on site, maybe just going for a couple days, not committing to anything long-term, shadowing just like we do in any other job, and considering joining a practice and partnering. You do little stages of decision making. Meta, if she wasn't in a loud place, I mean, she's been in Idaho and I'm in a slaughter if it was South Carolina, North Carolina, doing home birth center a while, and is now in Mexico. And it took her quite a while to get the midwives in the community to not look at her as an outsider and slowly let her attend some births and part of their community. So depending, I mean, international midwifery, maybe you're just moving to another country and you want to do midwifery somewhere new. And so there's different levels to it, but we are, I mean, especially Meta and I talked about it yesterday, like as soon as you say you're American or US, you already have a stigma, whether it's true or not, in the rest of the world that you have to get past. And some of it's going to be a little easier. I think actions speak louder than words. Like if you say you're American, they have a bias, but they start seeing what you're doing and what you're about, it will help. But knowing you've already got stereotypes against you. So.
Definitely, yes. And also, for example, in some places, I just going to put an example. I don't have children. So in some places, that was also a barrier for me to do field work, because it is an expectation that you needed to go through that process if you wanted to do it, right? So I was very young, and yes, is that what do you know about childbirth? You don't have a child. So there are also those things that
the cultural influences versus your degree is more important.
Yes. That is yes, and I know midwives who have also done work in Afghanistan, in some places like that. There's also lots of cultural I don't want to say barriers, but lots of cultural awareness.
Well, and I know quite a few of my amazing connections and networking. There's a lot of midwives in the military, and they'll reach out to me about outreach programs in the local areas outside the base that they're supporting and helping. And so I get a lot of influence too. So they don't have as much to worry about with like regulations and hoops, but they also have an assignment and they have to work with the assignment that they're given for that community. Meta just brought up some wonderful points about with being in Mexico and her experience being humble and entering the space from wanting to learn versus you have something to teach them. So it's really, that's a good point, Meta. Thank you.
That is a great point, which is true. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Is there any other common things? I think people like the idea of it, but they're fearful. Anybody is fearful, they don't know. Find people that have been doing it. Find people that are doing what you want to do and learn from them. Accelerate your success by leveraging their mistakes and their expertise and knowledge. There's always ways you can do it small scale yourself, or you can do a large organization, but just connecting with like-minded people that are doing what you want to do and finding the different countries. Mm-hmm.
But also the other thing is also talk about with nurses that have done also international work, because there are also precautions that you need to take in terms of your own safety. You have to know where you are going, because in some places being is not as safe. I have to say that. Mm-hmm. And you might be probably encountering in a situation that is really could be dangerous. So it's try to affiliate yourself with people from there that they know where they are taking you, and where are you going, and to make sure that you are not going to encounter any kind of unsafety situation.
Yeah, I know a lot of international travel people will talk about like the hot zones, and there's different levels
Yes.
of risk of how quick the turmoil could change. So it's not just like being a female in some of the countries, all of a sudden you just don't realize like, oh, I could say that, or I could wear this type of clothing, or I could do these little things that are very subtle. Or then, yeah, the war zones and the violence and these, maybe there isn't a police and there isn't these layers you just don't realize because you can't
No,
search
in
it.
some
So
places there is no law, and I have been encountered situations that there is not a police station there, and the people who are going to protect you, it's you encounter nice people from the community. So yeah, yeah. So I just say that what I want to say is that there is many things to consider, and it's good also to affiliate yourself with people who are in the community leaders that are going to be taking care of you as well.
yeah. Well, in the angle of the health assessment, like I know with vaccinations, there's a lot of national guidelines if you're going to this country to travel where and there's even seasonal stuff. There's stuff where, okay, you're deciding to go in January versus you're deciding to go in May. You may have hurricanes, you may have typhoons, you may have a higher rate of malaria. Like you just have to really know not just where you're going, but when you're going and who are you going with, and like, what is the plan, and having like backups, like, okay, if all of a sudden we have safety issues, where is our meetup place if we get separated, like just thinking about, because it's not like, oh, we take for granted so many things subconsciously. We know because this is our turf, this is our environment. We know so much. I always give it the example of like when babies are born, like they have no clue. And so international work is kind of like being a brand new baby. Like you're just in a new space and you've got to learn, is this safe? Is this good? And yeah.
Yeah, that's true. You know, water safety is just something that we take that for granted, and that in many cases is not the case. You have to have probably your own. I remember that I used to take with me. There were some. It's a powder that
Like the tablets, like the filtering.
yes,
Yeah.
it's just to in case that you are thirsty and you need to drink water. It's just to put that, and that makes the water drinkable.
Yeah, there's
Yes.
little things that you can prepare in your supply bag that are tiny. Yeah, those filtering waters and anti-diarrhea meds, things that kill people in a day or two there that we just take for granted. Like, oh, I'll just get some antibiotics or I'll do da. If you're not familiar and you're not used to the water and the food and the things, like people can die in these countries from just simple things of diarrhea. So sometimes and a lot of these international experienced midwives, it blew my mind when I went to Augustine Colebrook's international midwifery just retreat in Italy. And some of these ladies, you could tell they traveled all the time and did international work because their list of emergency what ifs, like they were planning for an earthquake, they were planning for what if I need satellite, like just every little thing they had in their bags. I was like, girl, nothing's gonna hit you from natural disasters. Like it's just because they've learned over traveling, like, what if all of a sudden you can't do XYZ and you're isolated? You should have something within your backpack to handle. So those were interesting conversations.
Yes,
Mhm.
that's true.
Perfect. So Atusa and Meta, I know it's harder for Meta, but maybe in the chat, is there any other great questions you guys have? And I'll definitely look Atusa in my resources and connections of direct international midwives, but I know there's a lot of great groups where they talk about it all the time and just really support each other and those resources too.
Yeah, that would be amazing because I would hop on Facebook and start making connections. I was actually scheduled to go to the Philippines in 2020, and then the pandemic hit, so it all kind of went to where where it went. But I'm going to reach out to her again too. And
So you were going to go do it through an organization or through yes, okay.
I was involved in I reached out and she said, sure, come on by, and I was so excited. I was going to go for 3 weeks and it was all planned, and then COVID came, so it was.
Because also I did some alarm here in Canada. There is the Society of Gynecologists and Obstetricians has a program that is called International Alarm, where you travel to also different countries, and you also do educational work. So I was an alarm international alarm instructor too.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yes.
I'm assuming there is some whatever regulation for nurse midwife versus licensed midwives, because our license is not as malleable.
It really has
Yeah.
to do with the country you're going to. I mean, it's
Yes.
honestly irrelevant if you're a nurse midwife CPM, because it comes down to that country and what they recognize and how they acclimate it and what their regs are, because it's not there's no international, like I know that's something that the Global Alliance of International Midwives, we're trying to work on more of a like stamp, where if you go to multiple countries, like we honor and accept a certain minimal standard, but it won't make a difference. I mean, there's more recognition, a tad bit more with the nurse midwife side in the European countries, but 3/4 of the countries, I was blown away when I did that midwifing the midwife resources, there's just no regulation. So we would be on the same boat of expectations and qualifications, because it's a license in the US. It doesn't transfer and translate anywhere else.
For better or worse.
Yeah,
But,
exactly.
but you are going to be, as an individual, you're going to be associated with an organization, right? You are going through sets to, do you know which is the organization that you are going to be associated with?
You know, it's been a minute. It's been 3 years. I haven't really looked back.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find it while we're on the line.
Yeah, because I was going to look at my videos. I got a lady that did a lot of international work at a birth center in the Philippines, and she did her school there and goes back often and is working on some stuff. So I wonder if she's part of the same organization you're referencing.
Because that is also that is a very good umbrella.
Meta just shared doctorswithoutborders.org, careers, work field, find role. But I know you said part of your challenge was it was such a long-term commitment versus 3 weeks. So I don't think Meta was quite on when we were having that early discussion.
Yeah, I would love to be able to get out for that long, but it's impossible with
It's a big commitment.
Practice and
yeah, and I know sometimes even International Confederation of Midwives, some people have chatted with them on guidance and things, and a lot of times they just redirect it to local regs versus they've got some hard, tangible advice. It's more of just like a large scale advocacy. I know there's like an international midwife group in Facebook. I just got to remember what they call it. So I'm going to dig a bit.
There's also the question of just, our immune systems and what we're used to being exposed to versus what you're exposed to on another continent or another region. Even if it's not, malaria, but even the viruses that are common there, and especially after COVID, I feel like our bodies, my body is different since COVID for sure.
Right.
So that's definitely are my IgGs and IgAs gonna fight for me, or am I gonna spend 3 weeks?
Well, and I think a lot of people are fearful now of just traveling internationally as a whole, whether it's for international midwifery or just going on vacation, because there is spikes in COVID with this summer and waves, and I think people just have a bigger sense of fear. Like, what if I get locked down, and what if I can't travel for a long extended period of time? It's one thing I say, hey, I committed to 3 weeks or 6 weeks, but I think that makes people more nervous too. So I just found this wonderful resource on Facebook. It's called International Midwife Assistance, and it looks like they do some international, it's out of Colorado. Their website is midwifeassist.org. And it seems really cool. I'm on the website right now, and it looks like a lot of international work in Haiti, Afghanistan, Uganda. But yeah, it seems like maybe that's more the direction that'll make sense for you to affiliate with or connect with.
Amazing.
So there's a lot of great resources out there. It's just sometimes it's not so much what you know, it's who you know, and tapping into those people, because you can't Google search and say, find me great midwife international programs, and you're not going to find much. So,
Afghanistan is no joke either. It's definitely, there's a lot of cultural, you have to be aware.
I can hear something about the Good Samaritan Society.
Oh, okay.
Also might have some midwifery, some of those opportunities, or sponsorship for opportunities for midwifery.
Perfect.
Yeah. So, well, hopefully you get to dabble a little bit in it. And yeah, if we can have more and more programs that give midwives the best of both worlds, they want to give back, but they can also come back to their private practices and keep that stable versus fully commit. And then you're like, okay, I've got to start my private practice and branding up again. So yeah, I think there will be more and more opportunities as midwives really kind of just like, what's important to me? I mean, you get a reality check when you're like, okay, the healthcare system's broken, or I'm frustrated and I've got to find the place that fits my culture. So I think there will be more and more midwives really prioritizing, like, how can I serve the best? Maybe the US or maybe the country they're in currently isn't the best way to do it. So.
Yeah, I think that the work that we do is extremely wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
So, and in some places, midwives play the role of, they do everything. I have been in places where midwives, they don't not only deliver babies, but they provide assistance during maybe an accident, an injury. I saw a midwife putting one of those traditional midwives putting a shoulder back into
the dislocated shoulder, popping it back in. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what it used to be before doctors. Yeah, the midwives were the doctor of the community. Yeah, that's what it used to be. So the pendulum's swinging again, and it's keeping up in cultures.
That was fascinated, and it's an opportunity also to learn. But yeah, so.
I heard something interesting this week, which I'm not fully sure it's true, but I'm going to look into it, is that in some countries, midwives are actually are discouraged from going to nursing school first. They're actually encouraged to go to midwifery school because the midwives actually believe that nursing school makes you think one kind of way, and they want their midwives to think another kind of way. And I was like, that's so interesting than the model that we typically see, at least around where I am,
Yeah, my education has been direct entry. I was not a nurse before becoming a midwife, and here in Canada is the same.
Interesting.
In the UK, some of the midwives are nurses, but also there is a direct entry avenue. So so where I was coming from, and in South America, midwives are usually going into midwifery without going through nursing school. And here the same in Canada. And yeah.
Interesting. And in Amsterdam, in Holland also.
Yes, in Netherlands too, they are also, it's a direct entry. And I had it because I teach at Toronto Metropolitan University. I teach in the midwifery school, and I had a few students that they went to the Netherlands, and I don't know if they did it through the university, through placement, but they had the opportunity to also follow midwives in there. In Netherlands, and some of them. So maybe because you are already you are a midwife in the USA, you can contact some of these midwives there, and they have an experience. They couldn't perform any kind of clinical work, but probably could be an observational placement, and from the Netherlands that can open opportunities to connect with other people who are doing humanitarian work or mission work. Amazing. Because they are quite involved. Netherlands, the Scandinavian countries are really, really immersed in global health. There are lots of organizations there.
I just found a neat one. It's called the globalmidwiveshub.org, globalmidwiveshub.org. ICM, and so International Confederation of Midwives, and a lot of international global health initiatives created this. It seems more of like a resource where it has listed like an actual map and data of like places to travel for midwifery support. And then it gives you a lot of the organizations you can connect with directly. But it seems like a really good resource center for anyone that wants to do international midwifery, the Global Midwives Hub.
Great.
Yeah. It was recently created, the global, I think it's not a long hub. I hear it in one of the conferences. I think it was last year conferences that they were going to start giving more attention after the pandemic, because right now the pandemic created a huge issue with midwifery. There is a true midwifery need in some places, and sometimes countries like, as I said, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, they are hungry for talent. So that could be also an opportunity, but you have to go through that regulation.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting. I interviewed about 2 years ago a midwife from Australia. She does hypnobirthing online, but she does locum midwifery, because it's, even though there's different territories, Providence's, it's one national certification versus we have to go through 20 hoops if we just want to cross state lines. She was talking like there's no insurances, there's no steps. They can call you on Monday and you've never been to that territory, and they can say, can you come out and help for 2-3 weeks? And the really rough parts of Australia and really rural, like there's not 20 hoops that we have to go through. So maybe figuring out a country that's bigger where you go through the hoop initially, but then you've got it, and then you can travel and say, okay, I'm going to help in these different areas throughout the country, because it is more versatile. They don't have to worry about extra regulatory hoops in some of these places once you get through the first one.
Canada is quite there is lots of regulations here, and but maybe there are some international countries that are more open to different designations.
Yeah, a lot of the things I find for like the college and nurse midwives, it talks about more international midwives wanting to come to work in the US, but not as much resources of the other directions, which is a bummer. You'd hope there's a little more stronger presence in the US of us having some support and resources, but maybe someone has to make it. Tusa, add it to your list of long things to worry about. You can create that US-based program that has some consistent resources. So
yeah. So I think I have available like 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. on Tuesday mornings.
When you're not sleeping, yeah, pretty much, yeah. Like, I'll just take sleeping out of my schedule. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. No, it's totally fine. I was picking on you.
I get it.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
silly.
So is there any other great questions you have, Tusa? I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just know Meta is in a louder place, so we can't pick on her much.
No, I'm excited. I'll do some. I'm excited about your organization, Leslie, because I don't even know how I found you. It just kind of showed up organically. I don't know. Honestly, I wouldn't be able to go back and tell you how I found you, but here we are. So there's
I love it. Yeah, no, thank you for letting me put the little plug in there. I appreciate that. Jill Chassain, our team and instructor, created an international midwifery course, and it's more about just like cultural, not like details of every step of to be an international midwife, but she talks about the culture and the acclimating. And so it's a very nice, I think it's like 3-4 hours long for international midwifery. That's a good EME course, Empowering Midwifery Education. But yeah, I started this in 2017 after my practice crashed and burned. I had a home birth center practice, and the average midwife is not taught business. I mean, that's why Sandra and I are so passionate. We're very heavy of being midwifery, but we see the power of what business has to increase access. And I hate the word sustainability. I'm like, sustain means to stay the same. I want thrive. I want like,
thriving,
we're going to grow successfully, exponentially. Burnout's going to be non-existent. Like I have these like crazy extreme goals. So, but it comes down to business and boundaries and professional development and being able to understand how your books are running. So yeah, so I started out kind of as an outlier more because what happened to me, I didn't want happening to anybody else. And so it's created a ripple effect. First, it was my burnout therapy. I went down the rabbit hole. When you have crisis, it brings opportunity. And then the more I went down the rabbit hole of just passive incomes and revenue streams and taxes and risk reduction, things that blindside midwives that they don't even know there's simpler ways. If they put in now, they don't have to worry about it later. It won't hit them in the face. So I'm very much passionate about risk reduction, empowering midwives. If a midwife is just creating a home birth practice, she may be able to serve a few ladies and give those few ladies a wonderful birth experience. But if we can challenge midwives to be in more business ownership roles, they can create teams, they can create community centers, they can create centers that now are serving the whole community versus what time is in my skills am I directly giving. So trying to challenge midwives to think outside the box of like, there's 2 types of practices you can start. You can start a self-employed practice. You can start being a business owner. Yes, you own it. But if the big difference is if you stop with your time, the revenue stops. It's dependent on you. The practice, the identity is not in existence. And I want to challenge legacy midwifery practices more and larger scale impacts with our knowledge and our skills and getting a good paradigm shift in the midwives with the next generation of what is possible. So that's my passion mission. So thanks, Atusa, for letting me bring that plug in.
Yes. I see that you are a very hardworking, Leslie.
Oh, you're so sweet, Sandra. Yeah,
I've seen that doing what you are doing requires lots of being on top of the things and advocate. Yeah.
And the birth centers just keep closing in our area. It's like one after another birth centers close, and people
a
want.
lot of times what happens is a lot of people are so driven. I have to be a network. I have to be a network because that's how I can serve people better. That's how I can be competitive. And you become, when the insurance world is set up as an assembly line, you get paid crap. You now have to take 4 times more ladies. You lose your quality of care, you lose your identity of what you're trying to create, and then the midwives get burnt out. Like, we aren't meant to give care to the assembly line of what the hospital's insurance world is set up to. So I see a big correlation. The 2 things I see with the birth centers and midwifery practices and challenges on those practices are business education and not knowing what they don't know, and the billing. A lot of them choose to do in network. Like, we talk, there's certain situations, if someone chooses a nonprofit, they've got multiple income streams, that their revenue isn't only the birth side, then they can make it work. But otherwise, if they're very dependent on in network, and now there's a bunch of transfers and they've got to think 9 months in advance, it's very stressful and hard to handle the ebbs and flows of what our birth world does with being in network. So that's a big thing. We talk about out of network, we talk about cash, we talk about low income sliding fee schedules, because every week a birth center opens, another one closes. This is that sustainability. I'm like, no, stop saying sustainable. Let's make midwifery sustainable. Like, I dream of 99% of the birth centers being around for 50, 100 years and 5 generations of midwives. We need, I have an extensive background with birth center education of how do you sell your birth centers strategically? How do you plan? It's not, I'm burnt out and I'm going to exit in 3 months. And if you don't find me anybody, I'm closing. And now there's no one serving the community. You got to plan 2 to 5 years. You got to really get your system in line so that you can exit. And most people just don't think that far ahead. They're usually paycheck to paycheck and not even do their budgets, let alone. So there's baby steps. I want to get midwifery too. I'm very excited for the future, but we've got to start somewhere. I want to call it, like, we got to coin this, Sandra. It'll be the business midwife Maslow hierarchy of needs. Until we get the midwives out of survival and fight or flight, I can't talk to them about big identity and dreams and thriving. So we've got to make them so that these hemorrhaging holes in their practice get some good, strong Band-Aids on it, so they feel like they can breathe a sec. And get a vacation once in a while. Like, those are the goals at stage 1. So.
Yeah. So I like the concept about thriving versus being sustainable. Yes.
Yeah, sustainable means same. Like, I just, when people say, let's make midwifery sustainable, I'm like, no, I don't want to make it sustainable. No. So, but yeah, I think a part of the big thing is getting that abundance versus scarcity mindset. I think too many midwives, the fear of, we only get 2% of the population. I'm not going to train people because I don't want to train my competitor, or there's very few women that fit this or find this. And my head instantly goes, 80% of the population is low risk, normal, healthy, and could be with a midwife, could collaborate. Like, we could not handle the load of what we could actually serve. We're not ready for it. So we have to get, like, the basic foundation so that we can start aggressively marketing and showing the potential to the bigger society. We can't even handle the little underground referral basis that most home birth centers have, let alone really shouting out the rooftop how amazing we are. COVID, oh my gosh, I can tell you, I wish we had more data. This is the part that drives me crazy too. I've just got more of stories and in testimonials, the amount of 50-year-old plus midwives that have retired the last 18 months has been astronomical. And I think, Sandra, you can talk about it too in Canada.
Oh my God, here there is a really, we are, I teach at the university, and we are having right now problems because we need more midwives, but we don't have people that can teach. Because most of the midwives are retiring, or they don't have the time to teach because they are so burnt out or so consumed with client care that they can't do it. So you need to rely more in technology, right? Use more technology like simulation, virtual reality, augmented reality, those things that right now programs need to incorporate into their curricula, which is also expensive.
Yeah. And it's not the same. I mean, holding a laboring mom and a baby
Yeah.
coming out versus like a
But you know,
machine, and yeah, but it's a starting point. It is, but yeah,
probably
it's not the.
those things you need, but there are some things that you will need to rely on technology, unfortunately, because the
Yeah.
people cannot. There is an scarcity. The source of having the midwife teaching is not there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really important. Like, I'm grateful Home Birth Academy, I'll put a plug in for them. They found a need. They're two home birth CNM CPMs that created an amazing resource, particularly for nurse midwives that want to travel from, I've never got clinical sites outside of the hospital. I know nothing about outside of the hospital, but I want to for one reason or another. And so helping to bridge these educational barriers that each one of us have. I love practices where CNMs and CPMs and LMs all work together because we all bring such different strengths, but a lot of regs make it difficult. But yeah, I wish every midwife would have a student, but they have to be in a strong place to support that. If you're in survival mode, you're not, this student's going to have a bad experience, the burnout, the turnover of students, let alone the midwives. Like, yeah, so I'm very passionate. Sandra and I talk about it often. We're trying to break down barriers, not just with business education, but a midwifery school that fits the nice balance. Like, you can actually tap into FAFSA. You actually cannot have your soul felt like it's sold to the devil because you owe $500,000 in debt after school, and now you only have one choice or the other of what you can do for working. So there's a lot of barriers to make midwifery accessible and expandable, but I think we're trying really hard, one step at a time, to tackle each of those and interconnect them. So I'm super excited for the future. I think we're gonna see birth centers everywhere. I know that for a fact. They've meant that I had 3 home births. I love my home births, but it's a lot harder when we're in that critical point of midwifery that we need a kind of central location. And then as we hit more thriving, expanding, let's get some more home births, let's get some more collaborations. But I think too many times people are trying to open home birth practices in 3-hour voids, and then they're wondering why they burn out because they don't have a team of support when they want a little break and they're not feeling well. So we got to do this strategically, but I think having great people like you guys joining us and just asking questions and talking and getting people when they're complaining and frustrated and everybody's just talking about all the problems, we're just going to keep doing it over and over again. We've got to step back and say, okay, what can I do? What can I learn? What can I change in my life and how I approach things with my clients? Yes, I have this innocent Ina May midwifery that this is how midwives should be, but what is contemporary midwifery with realistic expectations so that I can be a happy, compassionate midwife long-term versus a burnout of 6-7 years, which is the average right now. So there's a lot of potential, but yeah, international midwifery.
5 is in Canada. 5 years in Canada.
5 years in Canada, yeah. And I'd be curious post-COVID. I think it's accelerated a lot faster. I have some ladies that are burnout as new graduates. They don't even hit the profession. They're students and they're done. So.
I know people who I taught, and right now they are sometimes messaging me and said, I'm going to be taking a leave of absence because and they have been 3 years in practice, 2 years in practice. So yes, you're right. But I think that will require us to do more collaboration, start to think creatively, try to work with other models. And
thinking outside the box, how you can collaborate with each other, because too many people say I got to hire them or I've got to partner business, and I was like, there's 1,000 ways you can work together and how you can do it based on your needs. So so we do consulting work where we just help people kind of think about those creative ways and outside the box and what works for them, and helping. Sometimes it's just the mindset of what the midwife feels so much guilt if she's like, I took a night off, but I actually didn't, like, my stress hormones never went down because they were just feeling so much guilt from just leaving their clients, or they're on vacation and they're never getting off the EHR and seeing if somebody delivered. And like, we have to, like, so when Sandra and I meet with people, it's not just about business education. It's like getting past this mindset stigma of, to be a midwife, you have to give everything in your heart and soul, and that's it. And then you're second rate, versus if we can show midwives, like, you take care of yourself, you do exercise, you take breaks, you have boundaries and hobbies and vacation, and everything else has a ripple effect. You're going to be safer. You're going to be more, everything else does, versus this mindset of I give, and I get the leftovers. I think that's just a mom thing in general, but there's so much potential. So yes, I appreciate everybody getting on. We got a couple more minutes. Any international midwifery questions you want to pick Sandra's brain about?
I hope I can help. But it's just I hope that my experience has been valuable for.
Thank you. I'll come teach for you in Canada.
Was that?
I'll come teach for you in Canada.
How? Sorry, I didn't.
I'll come and teach. You need teachers?
She said she'll teach for you in Canada. She'll teach for you. Be a teacher.
I teach at
I'll come tomorrow.
Toronto Metropolitan University. Is that the right question?
She wants to come teach with you. She wants to work with you and teach
you would
with
like
you.
to teach with me? Yes. So that could be possible. You know,
I know you're working on some amazing projects there, Sandra. She could set up a discovery call and you guys could chat. I know you're trying to do some great things in Canada. And I mean, I am not going to stress, but out of my whole team of consultants, Sandra is being very humble with all the knowledge and skills and experience and degree she has. I am promising you, like, if she gives you a little one-on-one time, your jaw will be dropping with the level of knowledge of what she has. So
I'll reach out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Also, collaborations happening here with hospitals and licensed midwives, because I've been at 2 meetings in the last year where they're like, okay, midwives want to join us, and it's like, okay, what's happening? And one hospital was like, we can't find obstetricians, nobody wants to be an OB anymore, so we have to.
Right now OB is also another profession that is really OB, family physician. So I think that we need to start thinking strategically how we can fill the void of those absence. So we need to start thinking strategically how we can work, because sometimes you think that hospitals, organizations are your enemy, but they right now, because there is a need, they are doing things.
Yeah, they
outside do. Of the here in Canada, they were waiting for approval of certain. Okay, we don't have much time, right? But for certain. For example, the management of oxytocin without transfer, or sales like this are starting to be accelerated. Midwives right now, under a designated act, can introduce IUDs, can prescribe oxytocin for augmentation, and very soon narcotics is going to be also allowed to do. Is going to be within the scope. So these things require to start thinking strategically. How do you approach an organization to say, okay, this is my experience, this is who I am, I bring in this, how we can collaborate.
Yeah, and the hospitals also, one of the hospitals said, you know, we want licensed midwives on the teams. And one of the older midwives who's like burned out and exhausted, and she was like, I came to you 20 years ago and I pitched this idea. And how come it's taken you 20 years to come full circle?
It's a necessity.
Because it's a necessity. Look at about virtual care. People were thinking about virtual care, all with regulation. The COVID,
not
we were always virtual.
So she said something so powerful, because the doctor, the chief of the obstetrics, she was so honest. She said, listen, we have been bought out by a massive organization. All of us are on salary. In the olden days, midwives were our competition.
Revenue.
Now,
revenue value.
You come in and take up some of the work. We're getting paid the same, no matter if we do 200 births or 50 births. So let them pay you to do basically the grunt work, right? Because we're getting a salary anyway. So the whole model of the hospital has changed, with physicians becoming salary versus having
the revenue, the value base, because they would compete. They'd be like, no, I'm going to see her because you're getting my bottom line.
So
we can help with some of those strategies if you need that, and then if you have other colleagues, how to negotiate.
Timing is everything. You can have the best ideas in the world, but if the alignment of right now, honestly, with post-COVID and the crises in the US and around the world, like, we could pitch the coolest, we have the highest probability of getting implemented into new creative situations right now compared to anywhere I've seen in time. There's a lot of opportunities if we know how to present them.
Well, I'll reach out to you, because I work with a group of midwives and we've been approached. Okay. And I think we need people like you to help us to figure out
You got to
Where
make sure the contracts, yeah, you got to understand the clauses and the non-competes and how much they own you. Because a lot of times they're the deep pocket, they're the big dog with the legal program that if it drags on, you're the one that's going to give up. So a lot of times I will review, and I've got some great lawyers I can send you to too. But yeah, that's the biggest thing when it's one thing to talk the talk. What does the paperwork say? So
exactly. Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks, Meta.
Thank you.
Can't wait to see you in a
Okay.
couple of weeks. I'm excited. Okay, I'll talk to you ladies later.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.